Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning here tonight to chat about this new Fontaines D.C. album, Dogrel. Fontaines D.C. are an Irish post-punk and punk rock band that over the last year has been hyped to me so hard that literally I feel like I can't escape these guys. I feel like every other month they were dropping a new single from this debut album, and every month people were hyping it up to be the next big thing in punk. So much so that honestly it took a while to get around to listening to these singles, but I couldn't just help but feel like, wow, what is all this hype about? And I honestly worried that the hype wouldn't be worth it after all of this. Now, truth be told, I liked a lot of the singles. As a matter of fact, I still really love a lot of the singles, but still, I couldn't help but feel like maybe this album was going to disappoint just a little bit. Well, let's chat about it, friends. This album starts off with Big, and holy shit, this album does not waste a single second, man. This is just a really grimy, upbeat, and fresh post-punk tune that has actually a lot of really fresh ideas to these genres. It's very gritty and not nearly as polished as that I've heard lately from these genres. But even outside of that, the raw anger here is absolutely great. This genre over the last couple of years has been awesome, but it has gotten a little over the top. To hear Fontaines D.C. bring in the normal sounds of post-punk, but bring in socio-political themes as well as brilliant one-liners, it's just great. Then we have Sha Sha Sha, and let me tell you, this DIY approach to this album is just scratching all sorts of itches. This one has such a punchy riff to it that I honestly have to hold myself and contain myself from getting up and dancing a little bit. I love the punchy, practically robotic performances here that are just oozing with personality. And lyrically, this continues to hit home in such a big way. These young men have so much to say, and they're wonderful at getting it across. In every way, this album is post-punk as you remember it and as you know it, but maybe a little bit more localized, which is great. Roy's tune, on the other hand, is a little bit more airy, a little bit more fluid, but in respect to the rest of the album, it's just as sharp lyrically and packs just as much of an attitude. It's just nice to hear the guys go for a little bit more of an airy, less robotic tune and go with it so succinctly and still be able to carry over the same emotions and anger. Because trust me, while there's a little bit of an airier tune, it's far from a light one. It's still very intense and genuinely grisly and actually really flooring at the end of the day. And not for nothing, but Boys in the Better Land might be the best track here. I am stunned by just how good this album actually is. This is just nothing short of an upbeat, triumphant track that every time I hear it, I can't help but get caught up in. If you told me this track was written 30 or 40 years ago, I honestly would have believed it. It's intense and all, but it's incredibly smart, seriously heartfelt at times, which is kind of weird, and genuinely catchy too. All I can say is I'm actually blown away by this album, and I'm actually pretty shocked by just how much the hype to this album really stood up. And while these guys aren't making the post-punk sound a little bit more localized, they're taking the post-punk sound and giving it a seriously fresh new face that is really needed right now. Too Real, early in the album, gives me the damn chills every time. This one is just such a simple, classic approach to the post-punk and punk rock genres, so much so that it's not even approached this way anymore, but it's just so fresh sounding. The zooming guitars, the strangely still sort of stripped down feel, it's all really great. And lyrically, these guys do not hold any punches. It's hypnotic and downright mesmerizing. So much so that during some of these spoken words pieces, I could not be more in the palm of their hand. I love it. By the time the television screen rolls around, it's pretty obvious that this is just an album of great unrest. It's one that's constantly so moving, constantly racing around, but it's also very stiff in a weird way. But even though these tracks are pretty rigid most of the time, they end up sticking with you in a big way. That's mostly due to just how catchy most of these vocals come off and just how fresh these guitars sound. And Television Screen is great because I feel like this one is a little bit more general. It's just so much more universally understandable, with the guys really diving into some pretty broad topics. Once again, it's just a very slick tune that I can see myself repeating and repeating and repeating. And for a deep cut, The Lots might be my favorite tune here. I love the groovy bass licks and the very somber vocal performance here. There's just this overall feeling of dread as well. But honestly, it remains just as intense and lyrically sharp. Like, the fact that these guys have this much to say at this point in their careers is actually staggering. Like, I would love to just sit here and talk about these lyrics all day, give examples, but honestly, I feel like it's much more powerful to hear it firsthand for yourself. Not to mention, the very grisly production just continues to hold no punches whatsoever. And Chequeless Reckless is just a no-rules, upbeat, gnarly punk anthem. It's just as in-your-face and explosive. But the more straightforward sound to this track is absolutely appreciated at this point. Like, this one even comes armed with a fantastic guitar solo. Yes, please. And I have a lot of the same thoughts on Liberty Bell. This one is just as straightforward and just as aggressive. Now, like, of all the tracks here, this one might not stop me in my tracks as much, but I'm still very into the very old school approach to punk rock. It's very nice. I feel like for me though, like where it's placed in this album right after Chequeless Reckless, like is kind of bringing me down on this track. I feel like it could have spiced up one of the earlier moments here, but still, it's a very catchy, aggressive jam that's solid. Maybe you haven't realized, but I freaking love the hell out of this album. Like, if I had to choose one track, and I know that I'm gonna get some hate for this, that I really wouldn't, like, consider, like, a fantastic track from start to finish, it would be Hurricane Laughter. That's just me, though. Like, I feel like I certainly dig the very in-your-face style on this track. It's much less melodic, it's much more pummeling and aggressive, and I actually really love just how out of control the guitars come off. But because of the lesser focus on songwriting, I feel like this track just doesn't hit me nearly as hard. But like, if this is the worst thing that this band is doing, I could easily look past it. But Fontaines D.C. really do knock it out of the park with this album's finale, Dublin City Sky. Like, as far as like an old school tension building post-punk jam, this is the most tense track here. But here they bring in like traditional Irish folk music into the vocals, which is something I want to hear them do so much more of because it's freaking brilliant. Like, this track ends up being incredibly tense and bulky, but at the very same time, it's incredibly heartfelt and incredibly emotional. Like, if you told me that this is where this album was going to end, I probably wouldn't believe you, but I'm just so glad that it did. Like, these guys really do have it all, and I can't wait to see where they go next. So, spoiler alert, this album freaking rules. The hype that has been built up for this album over the last year or so has absolutely, like, paid off. This is a brilliant punk album. Like, when this album isn't playing to the old school crowd, bringing in these elements of punk rock that, like, if you told me were written in the 70s and 80s, I would have believed you. They're honestly, like, bringing the sound to a new generation and giving it a fresh face. It's aggressive, it's catchy, it's DIY, it's in your face, but it's also oddly harmonious, heartfelt, and emotional. I'm feeling a light 9 on this album, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you guys would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.